home for Super Bowl 56.
KUAM News Headlines is presented by Calvo's Insurance, a legacy of trust, serving Micronesia since 1938. Matson, celebrating 25 years of commitment to Guam, Micronesia, and the CNMI. Cars Plus Hyundai, home of the Kona electric vehicle, an electric heart with an SUV soul. Test drive yours today at Cars Plus. McDonald's of Guam, I'm Loving It, and King's Restaurant, serving your local breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites for over 45 years.
Ahead on prime time, to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 for the next 2 weeks, Catholic schools will move to remote learning. Plus, a man is arrested for a December fatal crash in Jigo, and you can now request free at-home COVID test kits online. Hafid and good evening, everyone. Guahusi Isaiah Ugin, and thank you for joining us. In efforts to further prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus, all Guam Catholic schools will be switching to remote learning for the time being beginning tomorrow. Following meetings with all 13 school principals and Archbishop Michael Burns, the Archdiocese of Agana announced late this afternoon that Catholic Education Superintendent Father Val Rodriguez decided to have students transition to distance learning on a temporary basis. Tony Diaz, the Archdiocese of Agana spokesperson, shared with KUAM News when students can anticipate returning to school campuses for face-to-face learning.
At this point, we're saying let's see in 2 weeks. We'll go with this remote learning, and then on February 7th, we pray to come back to the schools.
School administrators are reaching out to parents, guardians, and students regarding class schedules and to pick up class materials. Diaz added, quote, the Archdiocese will continue to monitor the virus community-wide and will make updates as needed, end quote. In other education news here on the island, with the Guam Department of Education reporting 44 employees positive for COVID-19 since January 3rd and close contacts must quarantine, how is GDOE managing to carry out its operations? GDOE Deputy Superintendent of Operations Erica Cruz told KUM News how they are covering staffing shortages.
The day before the school starts, so at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we are able to identify individuals who will be able to support our schools. And the following morning before 8 o'clock, our school administrators inform us of what supports they need.
When KUM News asked what the total count of employees are out because of contracting COVID or being a close contact, GDOE was unable to provide that number as of news time. GDOE Superintendent John Fernandez shared with media outlets during a press briefing this afternoon that schools are still able to manage operations for students despite reporting over 200 cases among employees and students since returning from the Christmas break 3 weeks ago.
Right now, we're able to maintain operations. It's a day-by-day situation where we get the reports from the schools in the morning and deploy personnel for that day. We hope it doesn't increase significantly. These schools do have a risk assessment tool in place, at which point if they are unable to get sufficient support for their staff shortage, are able to recommend closure, either partial closure or full closure of their schools. We haven't reached that point yet.
According to GDOE's daily COVID reports, 169 students and 44 faculty members have contracted the virus in the last 3 weeks. About 94% of employees, 96.5% of students 12 years of age and older, and 20.2% of students ages 5 to 11 are reported fully vaccinated against the virus. Island residents are now able to order their at-home COVID test kits starting today, free of charge. Governor Lou Leon Guerrero.
As you know, President Biden issued a 500 million at-home test for free, and they're working at the website to get it all going. We are eligible, and once they're working very feverishly, the federal government working very feverishly to to stand up the website and make it as smooth as possible. Once that happens, people can go straight into the website and order their home test.
Guam, the CNMI, and the other U.S. territories are part of the Biden administration's plan to provide free COVID tests to U.S. residents to help mitigate the spread of the COVID-19. According to the White House, test kits quote, will typically ship within 7 to 12 days of ordering, end quote, through the United States Postal Service. There's a limit of 1 order per residential address, no matter how many occupants are in the home. The order includes 4 test kits. All kits that will be supplied will be approved by the Food and Drug Administration and are capable of detecting the Omicron variant. All tests will come with detailed instructions. You can order your free COVID home tests at covidtest.gov. In other news, the Department of Public Health and Social Services sent out a flow chart of what residents should do if they catch COVID. Public Health sat down with KUAM's Daniel Perez to explain the chart and answer any questions residents may have about it to avoid confusion.
In the isolation and quarantine chart Public Health released for the general public, there are 3 categories, and according to COVID-19 Public Health Emergency Incident Commander Fernando Esteves, residents will ultimately fall into one of each, starting with those who aren't vaccinated.
If somebody is not fully vaccinated and they're a close contact, they have to quarantine for 10 days from the date of last exposure. So that's the simple part. That's if they're a close contact. If they're not fully vaccinated and they test positive and they feel symptomatic, then isolate for 10 days, and that's going to be discontinued. 24 hours if they've had no fever after 24 hours without the aid of any medications.
Fever is the biggest tell to watch out for, so that means no fever-reducing meds and symptoms have improved to end your isolation. Esteves added those who aren't vaccinated but are asymptomatic, meaning they have no symptoms, all they have to do is quarantine for 10 days after they get tested. For those who are fully vaccinated but don't have the booster shot and are a close contact of someone who caught COVID,
we recommend that they quarantine for 5 days since the exposure of the last exposure, and that we also recommend that they get tested as well after 5 days. If somebody is fully vaccinated and not boosted and they've tested positive, and then if you look here, and then same consistent with all, that they're symptomatic, then they must isolate for 5 days since symptom onset.
Again, no fever-reducing meds can be used, and their fever and symptoms must have improved to end their isolation. Now, if residents are vaccinated and haven't gotten the booster but are asymptomatic, they must quarantine for 5 days after getting tested. For those that are fully vaccinated and boosted or are ineligible for the booster, they fall in the last category, including some manumco and children 4 or younger.
So if they're fully vaccinated and boosted or ineligible, if they're a close contact, we recommend that they just get tested after 5 days. There's no recommendation for quarantine if they're a close contact, and that's for the fully boosted.
If residents who are fully vaccinated and boosted test positive, they must isolate for 5 days since feeling symptoms, and if they have no fever and other symptoms have improved, they can end their isolation. For those asymptomatic, they must only isolate for 5 days. Esteves added the flowchart made by Public Health mirrors the one released by the CDC. The only difference, says DPHSS, modifies it to fit the ongoing COVID situation on the island. Daniel Perez reporting for Guam's News Network.
Daniel Perez, thank you for that report. On Tuesday morning, investigators with the Guam Police Department's Highway Patrol Division arrested 23-year-old Nicholas K. Hopper for vehicular homicide as a second-degree felony in the death of 59-year-old Pedro Tavier Jr. As we reported, it was the afternoon of December 9, 2021, when GPD and GFD responded to a traffic crash on Route 1 northbound near Gain Animal Shelter and Chalanfongo in Jigo. According to court documents, Hopper was attempting to change lanes and pass another vehicle, lost control and ended up hitting Tavier's purple Nissan Pathfinder, which ended up colliding with a concrete pole. Tavier had to be extricated from his vehicle and later died from his injuries. Hopper was also charged with reckless driving with injuries, speeding in a posted zone, imprudent driving, and unsafe lane change. He was booked and confined. She's the third judge to be assigned to the case, but will she be the last? Judge Maria Cezanne has been assigned to former DOC Deputy Director Joey Terlahi's case after both Judge Vernon Perez and presiding Judge Alberto Lamarena disqualified themselves due to the personal ties with the defendant and his family. Salahi pleaded not guilty to felonious restraint as a third-degree felony and 2 charges of official misconduct as misdemeanors. The former deputy director resigned from his position at DOC in September of 2019 after he was named by an FBI agent in federal court related to the indictment of former Jotnia Mayor Jesse Blas. Salahi was present during a 2017 barbecue where Blas allegedly beat a woman up and held her for 3 days. Salahi is accused of exposing the victim to risk of serious bodily injury and for injuring and abusing his position as a government official in relation to a crime. He remains free on a $5,000 personal reconnaissance bond. Salahi, who was a former marshal for the Superior Court of Guam, was also ordered to stay away from the alleged victim along with the Superior Court of Guam's probation and marshal's office, with the exception of his assigned probation officer. In other news, some $13.5 million is now available for those who need help with their mortgage, utility, and property tax payments. The governor's office announced that pre-applications for the Guam Homeowners Assistance Fund will be accepting beginning Monday, January 31st. Up to $15,000 will be available to prevent foreclosures for those who have experienced financial hardship since January of 2020. According to a release from Adelup, the U.S. Treasury Department approved the U.S. of American Rescue Plan money to fund the program. Applications can be made online at doa.guam.gov or at the Guam HAF program office located on the second floor of the ICC building in Tamuning from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's designed to help safeguard Guam from the prescription drug epidemic that's plaguing the U.S. mainland. A new bill would expand the local prescription drug monitoring program and mandate medical practitioners who prescribe certain controlled substances to register for it. KUAM's Nessa Lacanto reports.
The bill by Senator Talina Nelson notes that more than half of all local prescriptions are for opioids, but only 65 of 392 doctors who can prescribe controlled substances are registered to the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program database. Public Health's Division of Environmental Health Chief Tom Nadeau says they support mandatory prescriber registration.
This will result in improved patient care and management. Individual practitioners have a professional, lawful, and ethical duty to ensure controlled drugs are prescribed and dispensed in a manner that takes into account the nature of the drug being prescribed, the established medical standards for prescribing such drugs, and that there is a legitimate medical purpose for treatment using these drugs.
But Gary Schiff, a patients' rights advocate, says the mandate is not necessary. He opposes what he believes is an unnecessary government intrusion into what should be a private matter between patient and physician.
The prescription drug monitoring program was set up to have the firewall at the pharmacy. If you go into a pharmacy with a Schedule 2, 3, 4, or 5 medication, they must, by law, access your history and see if you're doctor shopping, how many prescriptions. And if they don't do that, they won't be able to continue to order those drugs.
Public Health's Nadeau disagrees.
It starts with the prescriber. That's usually the physician. They're the one who writes the prescription. So I can't say that this should be just placed responsibility given to the pharmacist alone. I think this should be a whole healthcare community effort. Everything from the prescriber to dispenser, to the public, to law enforcement.
But Schiff believes it's a solution looking for a problem.
Now, I also believe strongly that the system we have is working. I don't see statistics where we're seeing prescription drug abuse on the street, people, stealing drugs, overdoses. That's not Guam.
The bill revises a previous measure introduced by Senator Nelson in 2020. For Guam's News Network, I'm Nestor Lacanto.
And once again, we invite you to voice your view across our social media pages with our daily question. Today we ask, how should GDOE address recent student fights at school? Let us know in the comments and we will share responses on the link. Stick around for more news here on Primetime. You're watching KUAM.
It's beautiful.
It is, right, baby?
Dad, isn't that where we usually stop for gas?
It's where we used to stop, but not anymore.
But isn't that the place with the milkshakes?
Okay. Okay, all right, let's go.
Good job, kids.
Take your adventure further in the first ever Santa Fe Hybrid.
Do you feel like you're missing out on something? Make life more rewarding with Pacific Points.